Let's jump right in. We're unpacking something absolutely fascinating today, the invisible machinery behind global wealth. We're exploring the hidden architecture that actually dictates how empires rise and, inevitably, how they fall. To really wrap our heads around this, I want you to picture the year 1500. It's a year of just a shocking historical paradox. Picture a single Chinese admiral commanding a fleet so astronomically massive that Europe's entire navy combined could have fit inside it as a mere footnote. China had gunpowder, they had the compass, they had paper money, and literally the absolute largest economy on Earth. And then, almost overnight, they did the unthinkable. They burned their ships, they turned completely inward, and within 300 years, the empire that once ruled the seas was being carved up by nations a fraction of its size.
Okay, let's dive into this stark contrast because it's wild. Think about Zheng He's treasure ships. These vessels were 4 times longer than Christopher Columbus's Santa Maria. Columbus's ship is just tiny by comparison, really a historical footnote when it comes to maritime engineering. The Chinese had unparalleled naval dominance, the most advanced technology on the planet. Yet, as we just established, they burned this incredible fleet and just closed their doors. It's an unbelievable twist of history, right? They had every single advantage you could possibly measure, but they chose to walk away from global expansion.
Which brings us to a terrifying question. If having the most resources, the most people, and the most advanced technology doesn't guarantee permanent wealth, what actually does? I mean, this is a question that should keep every powerful nation today wide awake at night. Because this explainer, it's not a story about gold. Gold is just the scoreboard. True wealth relies on invisible, underlying systems. It relies on psychology, decisions, and structures that turn some nations into engines of infinite wealth, while others, standing on the exact same advantages, quietly rot from the inside out.
All right, part 1, the 4 invisible gears. See, every wealthy empire in history relies on the exact same hidden architecture. Before an empire can become truly rich, it needs 4 specific things, quietly working together, kind of like gears inside a clock. First, geography. Control a river, a strait, or a mountain pass, and you control everyone passing through. Second, trade. True wealth comes from being the essential middleman that everybody else needs. Third, taxation. Now, not the kind that crushes people, but the kind that actually funds infrastructure and courts without destroying the economy. And fourth, banking. That quiet ability to lend, insure risk, and turn tomorrow's promise into today's capital. I really want you to remember this. Missing even one of these gears means an empire can literally conquer the entire world and still go completely broke doing it. Let's look at how that first gear, geography and infrastructure, actually works in practice. Think about this massive leap in efficiency. The Persians, way back around 550 BCE, were the first to really master this. They realized that taxing trade didn't just mean using brute force. It meant building a revolutionary 1,600-mile standardized road system. Before the Royal Road, a message took 3 agonizing months to cross the ancient world. After, just 7 days. By standardizing roads, weights, and currency, the Persians engineered an environment where wealth flowed directly to them, simply because they controlled the most efficient choke point on Earth.
Moving on to part 2, the master architects. Now, the Persians were pioneers, for sure, but they were just the beginning. And this brilliantly illustrates how specific historical empires didn't just stumble into money, they literally engineered economies. Take Rome. They taxed their provinces to fund an astonishing 250,000 miles of roads, reinvesting in infrastructure that made those provinces even richer. It was a wealth engine feeding itself. Then you have the Ottomans, who mastered geography by sitting right on the crossing between Europe and Asia and just making everyone pay a toll. But look at the Mongols. They didn't build roads or markets. No, they built absolute commercial security. Genghis Khan enforced this mafia-like brutal order across the Silk Road, creating the safest commercial corridor in the ancient world. You didn't pay bribes, you just traded safely.
But we have to zoom in on the Dutch because their innovation is absolutely staggering. In 1602, the Dutch East India Company became the first company in history to issue shares to the public. It is amazing. Think about it. A tiny nation of barely 2 million people became the financial capital of the entire planet. And they didn't do it with massive armies. They did it through spreadsheets and paper. By letting ordinary citizens own a piece of a trade voyage to Indonesia without ever having to actually board a ship, risk got divided and capital got multiplied. They essentially invented the modern stock exchange as an afterthought. Which brings us to part 3, the silver trap.
Now, having seen how these brilliant systems work, we need to talk about what happens when you completely ignore them. Between 1500 and 1650, Spain discovered something no empire before them had ever held: literal mountains of silver in the Americas. I mean, they extracted such an unprecedented, immense volume of raw silver from Potosi that it single-handedly reshaped global inflation. This was the greatest influx of raw wealth in human history. They held more money than any empire before them. By all accounts, this should have set them up to be the richest, most dominant, permanent economy in world history.
But instead, we arrive at the number 4. This is the shocking twist here. Despite pulling literal mountains of silver out of the earth, Spain went completely bankrupt exactly 4 separate times. No way, right? Why? Well, because they consumed their wealth. Instead of building a banking system or infrastructure or domestic industry like the Dutch or Romans did, Spain spent their silver almost immediately on foreign wars and imported goods. The gold just passed through Spain like water through a sieve, enriching everyone else in Europe, while the Spanish themselves went broke.
Let's look at Part 4, Anatomy of a Collapse. You see, Spain wasn't the only one to fall. Every empire on our list eventually cracked. Let's walk through these eerie, recurring cracks that always form beneath the surface. Rome completely destroyed the silver content of the denarius, debasing their currency until trust collapsed and prices just spiraled out of control. The Ottomans suffered from administrative overexpansion. They grew so vast that corruption just ate away their tax system. The Dutch, despite all their brilliance, were eventually strangled by a rising British navy. And underneath it all, widening inequality and quiet, patient debt. They always wait in the background until a crisis finally calls it due. Which brings us to an incredibly powerful realization. The empires that fell weren't beaten by weaker rivals. They were beaten by their own unexamined success. This is the crucial secret here. Institutions and trust are what make wealth permanent. Rome's roads outlasted a dozen emperors. The Dutch stock exchange outlasted the company that built it. But the moment an empire stops trusting its currency, the moment innovation slows down because those at the top stop competing, and the moment inequality widens too far, collapse isn't just possible, it is entirely inevitable. All right, bringing it to today, Part 5, the modern playbook. So the crucial point is, how does this ancient history apply to us right now? Well, the British Empire and now the United States didn't invent a new formula. They simply combined all the winning formulas from the past. That Ottoman obsessive trust in their coinage, that is exactly how the modern US playbook treats a trusted global reserve currency. Dutch public markets, that's our modern financial markets turning citizens into investors. Roman lasting roads, that translates directly to our modern legal and infrastructure systems, which are designed to outlast any single president. The tools are exactly the same, only the century has changed. And that leaves us with the ultimate personal takeaway. Wealth that isn't reinvested, whether it's your money, your time, or your knowledge, does not stay wealth for long. It evaporates exactly the way Spanish silver did, quietly and way faster than anyone expects. This is true for massive global empires, and it's absolutely true for individual entrepreneurs. Trust, productive systems, and relentless reinvestment will always beat raw extraction.
I want to leave you with this lingering, provocative thought. Every empire we talked about today believed, at its absolute peak, that its wealth was permanent, and every single one of them was wrong. So the real question isn't why did empires become rich? It's this: when the wealth of our own moment eventually gets measured by historians centuries from now, which empire will we turn out to have been? Thanks for exploring the architecture of wealth with me today. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.